What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where today we're going to talk a little bit about the Pro Bowl voting. I had just got a notification a little while ago that Pro Bowl voting is officially up and going. I just want to look at the Colts roster and say, hey, this is who we're looking at possibly going to a Pro Bowl. And of course, who isn't, right? And we'll just go over this as quickly as possible, going through the roster, starting at the top with the quarterbacks. Unfortunately, no, none of our quarterbacks should be going to the Pro Bowl this year. Then you look at the running backs, and I don't think any of our running backs should be going to the Pro Bowl this year either. And I don't think it's entirely Jonathan Taylor's fault, but I think Jonathan Taylor just hasn't for the full year looked like old Jonathan Taylor. There were a couple games where he looked like old Jonathan Taylor, but he just hasn't been able to be consistent this year, just like our entire offense just hasn't been able to be consistent throughout the year. So unfortunately, no running backs. Wide receivers, Josh Downs is an interesting option. Alec Pierce, also an interesting option at wide receiver. Now, unfortunately, the guy you just paid, 24. Not really looking like a Pro Bowl wide receiver in the first year of his new deal, which is unfortunate, but you've had other guys step up. Honestly, for the most part, the stats are kind of stacking up the way I thought they would, except for Michael Pittman Jr. He has, less stats than I thought he would, but Anthony, there are plenty of games this year where Anthony's completed 9, 10, 11 passes, right? A couple of those games in there. So less opportunity for Pitt. I don't want to put it all on him, but of all our wide receivers, of the top four at least, Pitt probably honestly the most disappointing for me this year. But Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, those two probably at least in some sort of consideration, but probably not, to be completely honest with you. Tight ends, absolutely not having any tight ends in the Pro Bowl. Look at the offensive line. Really, the only person that's going to get any consideration is going to be Quentin Nelson. Really, just based on name value, he's played well this year. Actually, Quentin Nelson played really well all year, but he just came off arguably the worst game of his entire career. Okay, and just for context, he ended up allowing 5 pressures, 3 quarterback hurries, 3 quarterback hits, and had 3 penalties. So all around just bad for Q here against the Lions, who have a dominant middle of that defense. DJ Reader, Aleem McNeil, 2 guys are very, very good. He had a tough assignment, but again, the worst game arguably of his career, which again comes on the heels of, like, even though the offensive line, like Anthony Richardson's been pressured a lot this season, like Quentin Nelson's not the one. Quentin Nelson has had a fantastic year, really in all departments. It's really the offensive line with the rookies around him, right? Tanner Bortolini has been good, not perfect. Same with Gonçalves. He's been good, not perfect. Dalton Tucker, just seemed like he started well. He has fallen off a cliff. And Dalton Tucker, especially these last 2 weeks, we were much worse because Dalton Tucker was in the game. And all the pressures he gave up, the penetration in the run game that Dalton Tucker gave up, it's just getting him out of there, right? Whether it's Bernard Raymond coming back and Matt Gonçalves being right guard, or the guy we know, the guy we all know, and he's coming back to the team, Mark Glowinski. Does he come back and play right guard? Whatever the case, right now, Dalton Tucker clearly not ready. Defense is just taking advantage of whatever weakness they found with Dalton Tucker in film study, and just doing it again and again and again, because Dalton Tucker has easily been one of the worst offensive linemen playing football over these last 2 weeks. So just looking at the offensive line again, Quentin Nelson, really the only option there. But yeah, probably not. When you're a losing football team, you get less consideration. People don't really take the time to look at you, so probably not for Quentin Nelson. Now, the defense does have some interesting names as you go through it, right? You have, of the defensive end, I'd like to sit here and say that somebody has some sort of consideration, but they don't. because we don't play in any of our defensive ends enough for them to be one of the dominating defensive ends in the NFL. We just don't do that. So unfortunately, under Gus Bradley, defensive ends on our team are probably never going to the Pro Bowl ever. Like, just because no matter how good Latu gets, as long as Gus Bradley's here, he's not playing as many snaps as he should be playing. Then you have DeForest Buckner, who, of course, is always a possibility for the Pro Bowl, name value, really good veteran in the NFL, still produces when he's out there. Grover Stewart, same thing. He's been dominant dominant this year. So Grover Stewart could be in line for it. We'll see if those interior guys get the nod. At linebacker, EJ Speed, arguably having the best season of his career, but he's so up and down. He does have a tendency to miss tackles. For all tackles he gets, he misses tackles. Like, he could be the tackle machine in the NFL if he could just make all the tackles. But then you have Zaire Franklin, who is a tackling machine. But he, again, coming off one of his worst games, and again, I'm not just going to rely everything on PFF grade, but like a 39.6 PFF grade. That's crazy. Zaire Franklin has been really up and down this year. EJ up and down this year. They still have Segan Alubi as a starter here in the other spot, but we rarely see him, right? You don't expect any of the linebackers to make it into a Pro Bowl. And then Samuel Womack at cornerback. No, he didn't even start the year with us, so he's not going to get consideration for it. Jalen Jones, though, with the season he's had, he doesn't get a whole lot of interceptions, which is going to be a thing that holds him back. But Jalen Jones has had a really good season, and there's a real case to be made for Jalen Jones making the Pro Bowl. At the very least, being an alternate. So if one of these guys that is going to be going to a Pro Bowl, if they make the Super Bowl, they just don't want to play in the Pro Bowl games. Even though it's not the real Pro Bowl anymore, right? Just having that nod, and I think Jalen Jones has had the kind of year where he deserves some sort of recognition because of the year that he's had, right? And Kenny Moore, he's a guy that for the most part has had a really good year. But at that slot position, again, because we're losing, because he's a quiet guy, it'll be interesting to see. But I just don't expect Kenny to get into the Pro Bowl. Like, he through Kenny's entire career, he's had to do so much just to get the one Pro Bowl nod that he has. Like, it's crazy. He should have multiple in his career, but for what it's worth, I just don't know if he's going to be able to get it this year. And then what are we looking at? Safeties are the last ones here. Julian Blackman, Nick Cross. Julian has not been special this year at all. Just, yeah, really don't even notice him most of the time. Then Nick Cross, which I guess is probably a good thing for the defense, right? You're not noticing a guy. That's probably a good thing. So maybe I'm wrong with that take. Nick Cross has obviously been racking up the tackles. Actually, before this past game was played, Nick Cross's stats look like this: 102 tackles, 37 stops, 2 interceptions, 3 pass deflections, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 forced fumble. So doing a little bit of everything. It hasn't been perfect. There have definitely been some times this season where Nick Cross missed an assignment and there was a big play and a touchdown, I believe. Week 1, I'm pretty sure that happened, and a couple times there early in the season. But Nick Cross getting better as the years gone on, but definitely not up for a Pro Bowl, even though his stats, like with that many tackles, like when people go to look at stuff, people are gonna see Nick Cross, and there are gonna be more votes his way, just for the amount that he's around the ball. But at the end of the day, looking at the landscape of the AFC, will Nick Cross get enough votes to get into the Pro Bowl in the AFC? I just don't know if that's going to be the case. So we'll see. The way it sits, I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts have 0 Pro Bowlers. But I do think there's a chance we're able to get 2 or 3 from that defensive side, maybe just one. Whatever the case is, man. Um, Pro Bowl's a shell of itself, anyways. But it is good for these guys to get recognition. Hopefully, we can do something at the end of the season to maybe change some minds and get a guy like Jalen Jones in or a guy like Nick Cross and make sure DeForest Buckner for sure gets in because that's legacy stuff too. Like even though the Pro Bowl is not what the Pro Bowl used to be, DeForest Buckner being as good as he's been throughout his career had not having team success, he needs the individual accolades because this is a guy that has the kind of attitude and kind of mentality to put him in the Pro Bowl one day and be proud. The NFL could be proud to put a guy like him in the Pro Bowl. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully he's able to get in, add another one to his resume. But we'll see what happens. Of course, I'd like to know what your guys' opinion is. Do you think anybody on the team deserves to go to the Pro Bowl? You let me know who and why you think they should go down in the comment section. Of course, make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you continue to get notified anytime we have any more content dropping on this channel. Of course, appreciate you stopping by for another video. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.